We're live. Okay. Well, welcome everyone to the
We're
Wealth
live. Yes, we are.
to the Business Prowess Show. Sifu Raphael is actually out of town, and Dr. Andrea had an emergency pop up this morning. So here we go. All right. Well, I'm Drew Sutton. I lead the Drew Sutton Leadership Show, and we have guests with us, Arlene Washburn and Juli Bohmer, and we are going to find out about how these two lovely ladies have been changing the world with their business coaching and with children's books. So welcome, ladies.
Thank you.
And hold on just a second. I'm going to go ahead and play the business beginning.
Welcome to Business Prowess with Raphael and Dr. Andrea. Our show will bring you the best insights, ideas, and inspiration from successful entrepreneurs and CEOs in the business world. Don't miss out on the opportunity to learn from the best and stay ahead of the game. Sifu Raphael is the founder of 5 unique shows. He's a fitness professional, solutions expert, executive coach, and head instructor at Max Martial Arts and Fitness in New York. Dr. Andrea Adams-Miller is an award-winning international keynote speaker, best-selling author, and CEO of the RED Carpet Connection Publicity, Publishing, and Talent Agency, and CEO of IgniteYourRelationship.com. Known as the Dream Maker, she makes visionaries' dreams come true, bigger than they ever dare to desire.
All right.
Welcome,
Well,
welcome
all right.
everybody.
Yeah, welcome. Andrea, you want to take the first crack at this?
Yeah, I'm so glad to have you guys here. You know, when we talk about, the whole idea of building love and leveraging assets, Drew and I had a giggle because we're like, wow, we're going to talk about matchmaking and children's books together at the same time.
Yeah.
So, and I was like, I thought that was a punchline, but maybe not. And the whole idea of this, though, does make sense because of how we are and how we learn as children really, I think, sets the standard of how we're going to show up in our adult lives and how we show up in our relationships. And so, Arlene, let's have you start with that idea. We'll because we're adults now. So let's talk about, have you address that, and then we'll switch to Juli and see what she thinks.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me. Happy Friday, everyone. And I just want a quick shout out to those people struggling with Hurricane Helene. I know that it's a really tough day today. So hopefully everyone is safe. You bring up a really good point about children. Unfortunately, most of what we know about dating and relationships and, how to be in relationships is the stuff that we learn from our parents. Because unfortunately, they don't teach this in schools or in college. And then people struggle for many, many years until they finally figure it out through trial and error. So I think it is important. And I would love to see some relationship books for children, even starting at 5, about how to interact and what really matters in terms of what makes for a great relationship. So I think it's very viable. And I think it's definitely something that can be done, which is to really start introducing how to be in relationship from the time that you're a little child, 5 years old. It doesn't matter. It all counts.
Yeah. So Juli, you are the founder and the author of Juli Bohmer books. Tell us why you got into that and what you would like the kids to get from the lessons you want them to get from your books.
Sure. Well, I got into books based on my own kids. I'm a mother of 2 boys who are now 8 years old and 9.5 years old. And we've been reading bedtime stories since they were, 1, basically, even a little before that, just to get them into reading, to understand the process of reading, to learn from stories. And I noticed when they were very young, they really responded well to rhymes and repetition. They also really enjoyed the game of hide and go seek. I think they still do, even if they wouldn't admit it at this age. And they also enjoyed a little bit of being unable to predict what happens next. So in my early childhood books, I wrote rhymes that have to do with holidays. So 10 Little Pumpkins, hide and seek. The kids help the farmers find pumpkins on a pumpkin patch. and get to point to the pumpkins on each page and count. The first page is 1 pumpkin, the next page 1, 2. So they're learning to count with their fingers and find the pumpkins in a fun game while they're hearing the rhyme. In Santa's Reindeer Hide and Seek, they learn all of the names of Rudolph's pack. As adults, if I asked you to name off all of Rudolph's reindeer in the song, could you do it? I realized I couldn't, and I'm in my 40s. So I thought, you know what? What a fun way to teach kids all of the names. So they do a fun game of hide and seek with Santa in the North Pole, calling out for each of the reindeer. And then they can listen to Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer after that and know the names. As my children got older, of course, they liked more of a story. The rhymes were too easy. Hide and seek was too easy. So I got into the Strange Thing Forest, and I was really committed to keeping it innocent. So if I were a kid in a forest, what would I want to see that was fun? What would my kids like? Something that's not going to scare them. So there's shoes changing colors, bubble gum, flavored water, ice cream cone trees, anything that any child could particularly enjoy. And then finally in Quacky Wappy's Riveting Adventure, it's just a fun play of words with a lot of puns that make kids laugh and funny dialogue. So I was really committed to maintaining the innocence of children while entertaining them and leaving them feeling comforted and happy at the end of his story. Part of that came from when I told the old classics to my kids, like Little Red Riding Hood. They were terrified when the wolf ate grandma and was waiting in bed to eat Little Red Riding Hood. And then they didn't want to sleep alone at night with the lights off. I had to stay in the room with the lights on. So I was like, hey, you know what? We need to change it. So kids can feel safe going to bed and not scare them. So I'm really committed to maintaining innocence while bringing them joy, encouraging reading. I really like Arlene's idea of introducing relationships, doing it in a way that would be innocent, in a way that they can understand, in a way that preserves the innocence and promotes getting along in relationships as well.
One quick thing I just want to add to that is we need to move away from these fairy tale stories, which women believe, and men, well, mostly women, I have to say, even into their 70s, they're thinking that this prince is going to show up. And, dating and relationships is a lot more practical than that. And so I would love to see these books be a little bit more, moving away from that kind of Disneyland story that people believe for the rest of their lives.
And I haven't been writing about love stories just because of the ages of my children. So I really haven't given it much thought, but I think those are great points to touch on as well.
One of the things that I've been interested in is rewriting the stories because, all of our fairy tales right now are heterosexual, so they don't give people an opportunity to show up how they may show up in our lifetime now. And I own an intimacy and relationship business as well. And one of the things when I started that business, I decided not to become a psychologist because at the time, if somebody were gay, they were considered deviant. And that was still in the DSM as that being a psychological problem. And that bothered me because the friends that I knew that were gay, I didn't think that they were deviant. In fact, a lot of them weren't even engaging in anything intimacy because they were so concerned about would they go to hell if they love somebody of the same sex. So for me, I think our stories and fairy tales, I'm starting to see books written that are more open-minded. And for me, it's something that I would like people to see stories about themselves in that. And I know that's not everybody's religious belief or thought, but for me, I would like to see that because you're right. Waiting for someone to come and rescue you and take care of you and whisk you away and have this magic prince is a lot of weight on him and a lot of weight on her. So I don't like that old mythology.
Yeah. So I was just talking, I have teenagers right now. And so I'm kind of bridging the gap between adult conversations and kid conversations. And so how do you carry the truth authentically through that whole string is a challenge. I was just my 14-year-old likes this girl. And so we were talking about it. And I said to him, one of the things you need to do is you need to take the expectation down a little bit. You don't need to worry about asking her out. Why don't you just ask her what she likes? Like they both work at the movie theater. So I was like, why don't you just ask her what her favorite movies are and build the relationship piece by piece so that you can find out if you connect before you have to jump way off into things. Now, Arlene, you come from a matchmaking background. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on how to be authentic and show up authentic in relationships?
So great question. And I just want to quickly go back to what Dr. Andrea was saying, which is super important to really be open and to just let people love who they love. That doesn't take away anything else away from the person. So that's so important. Unfortunately, depending on where you publish that book, it might get banned. So that's the sad reality of our world today. But connecting, I think the best way for people to connect is through storytelling. I think often when people, young people or even adults dating, they ask a lot of questions, and questions are not the ideal way to get to know someone. It's actually storytelling, telling stories about yourself that are connected to your core values, and seeing how these other, the other individual will connect to that story and share about themselves. When people share back and forth, that creates intimacy, not in the intimacy way that people think about, sex or whatever, but it creates that connection. And so, because I think often when people start asking questions, what they end up doing is putting people on the spot or garnering someone to respond to something that they think the other person wants to hear. But when you're telling stories, and that's the beauty of a book, it tells a story, you learn more, you get feelings about it, and people hold on to the feeling of something more so than the actual thing that was said. I don't have a teenager. I have a grandson who's 3 years old. I have a 36-year-old daughter. And it took me years of her, she actually worked with me for a while, and I was secretly coaching her because I wanted her to have a happy and healthy marriage and to choose the right partner. And you can't, when your kids pick someone, you can't say that's not the right person for you, because then they latch on even tighter, right? So it took me years, and it worked, but it was very undercover coaching. The fact that she was working with me was very helpful, and she's, thank God, very happily married with a beautiful child, and they have a healthy relationship. And I realized that it was something I needed to do because I came from a background of the opposite, which I had a single mom. She didn't understand relationships, and she chose a partner who wasn't the right partner for her. And they ended up getting divorced. And there's so many stories behind that. And then when she tried to bolster myself and my sister, it was more of like, you need to be independent. You don't need a man. You don't the kind of advice that's very common out there. And what it does is it makes it more difficult for you to connect or to choose the right partner. And it's all with the intent of helping you and helping to bolster you, but it creates a mindset and thoughts that are not going to be helpful for when you actually want to, connect in a relationship. So I wanted to break that cycle, and thank God it's done.
Well, yeah, God, that's fantastic. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
I love it too. In storytelling, I always tell my clients, and when I used to work at a larger organization, I did what I called culture scripting. So I would tell these stories rather than saying, I need you to be interested in excellence. I would tell these stories about the importance of cleaning the baseboards, and how the very short version of that is my dad fussed at me because I needed to clean the baseboards, because when you're good at the small things, you're good at the big things. And if you're not paying attention to the small things, maybe you're not paying attention to the big things. So I went to a restaurant. I noticed they didn't have clean baseboards. I remembered that story. I ate there anyway, and I got sick. So stories are a great way for us to connect. And Juli, I know that you're telling stories to kids. How did you decide, hey, I want to be an author?
Well, after we'd finished reading bedtime books at nighttime, my kids would always say, just one more, just one more. So I would say, okay, I'll tell you a story with the lights off and you can listen to a story. Well, then obviously I don't have a book in front of me because it was dark. And that's when I would tell the old classics I remembered, like Little Red Riding Hood, The Three Little Pigs, Goldilocks and the Three Bears. I enjoyed them as kids, but I noticed my kids didn't really like them. They were terrified of the wolf in Little Red Riding Hood. Goldilocks are like, so this girl just walked into a random house. I'm like, yeah, that's not something we want kids to learn either. Like, you can't just walk into people's houses because the door is unlocked. And then, Three Little Pigs, it's like, well, the pigs are safe, but they have to like murder the wolf by boiling them in a pot of hot water at the end. So I'm like, these stories are really morbid. So when they would say just one more story, and I told all the classics, I thought, I'm going to start making up stories that are more kid-friendly, more relaxing, more age-appropriate, more innocent. So I started coming up with stories on my own. So when I decided to publish one of the stories they made up impromptu, my second grader at the time had brought home an assignment where in school they listened to creepy forest sounds and they listened to happy forest sounds. And they had to choose creepy or happy and write about a story about those sounds. So my son chose the creepy sounds, and he wrote, the forest was creepy. It smelled like dead fish. And I thought, dead fish? That's strange. So that night at bedtime, when I had to come up with a story, I thought of that assignment. And I said, okay, this story is about a little boy. All my stories are little boys because I have 2 boys. So this story is about a little boy who went for a walk in a forest. Well, my second grader's pretty smart at the time. And, oh, you're just copying my homework. I said, no, my forest is different than your forest. You just listen and see if we have the same forest. So then I was really put on the spot to come up with a new forest. And I remembered in Pete the cat, I love my white shoes. My kids really loved it every time his shoes changed colors when he stepped into a pile of different colored berries. So my story starts out where a boy starts out walking through the forest wearing red tennis shoes because my second grader had red tennis shoes. And as he walked, one changed orange and one changed green. So then he continues to walk and he feels hungry. All of a sudden, he sees an ice cream cone tree. My kids love ice cream cones. They would never guess that ice cream cones would be growing on a tree. So I kind of just started making up things as they went along. And when I finished it, there was dead silence. At first, I thought both of my boys were sleeping. And I said, are you guys awake? And they both said, yeah. I said, oh, well, what'd you think of this story? And my second grader said, good. His other answer is lame, boring, next. So I'm like, okay, that's approved of. He says good. And I said, what about you, Owen, to my younger one? And he said, I loved it. And I had never heard him respond like that before. So I thought, I bet if he loves it, other kids his own age will love it too. So I typed it up the next morning and started searching for publishers to submit my manuscript to. And that's what launched my publishing career. It wasn't planned.
I love that story. I love the story of the story. It reminds me that, like you said, the forest was different. He's like, oh, you're just copying my forest. One of the things that Andrea and I talk about all the time, and she's very good at this, is helping folks rewrite their history. Like the way that we experienced history doesn't have to be the thing that controls us in the future. We interpreted the forest this way, but we don't have to continue interpreting the forest that way. Andrea, can you kind of tell us some of the work that you do in that area? You're on mute, by the way.
Yeah. I was thinking about, thank you, by the way, Drew. I was thinking about that when she was talking about the shoes changing and thinking, I love that because to me, you have seeded to your child that circumstances can change, both positive and negative, and that he can also have control about how things happen in the future by how his shoes change color and what happens to him. And I believe that all of us, and when you talk about our relationships and talk about what Arlene does, and even Drew with consulting and me with talking about neuroscience and consulting, every one of us has this opportunity as we go through life. There are going to be other things that change the colors of our shoes by what we walk through or the path that we're on. But if we reframe or we learn or we bring in support or learnings from other things, we can then change again the color of the shoes or embrace the color of the shoes we're now wearing. So that's how I think about that. So thank you for your, I'm really liking the ice cream tree. That is my favorite.
I think we should all have ice cream trees. Yeah.
I think I would eat them too.
It's so funny when you go to an ice cream place, everybody's always smiling. It doesn't matter how old they are.
Yeah. There's an old Tony Robbins exercise where you look around the room and you pick a color. It's like yellow. Tell me everything that you can see. Focus and see all the things you can find that are yellow. And you close your eyes, and then I ask you, tell me everything that you saw that was green. And it just shows you that when you're staring at yellow, the whole room fills itself with yellow objects. But then when you're staring at green, and you close your eyes, you can't think of anything. And you open your eyes and all of a sudden there's green everywhere. And I tell my kids all the time, especially my 9-year-old, I'll tell her, are you looking at the world? What color are you looking at the world in right now? And she'll say, I hate this, Dad. But she gets the idea that not every, that it's we who determine what color the world is, right? And that can change as we go. So Arlene, you started out in matchmaking, and then you discovered that there's this your world needed to change. And that was into business coaching. So not only are you a matchmaker, but now you're coaching other matchmakers in business. So what are some stories that need to change for your clients to help them be not just a love coach, but a successful business person?
So thank you for that question. It's something that we run into quite a bit, that the folks that go into this industry who are really, you know, have a lot of integrity. They're very heart-centered. You know, we get therapists, social workers, and people like that who really want to help, often forget that they're also running a business. And so you can help and run a business and be profitable. And I think of it as like it's an energetic exchange. So you shouldn't be shy to have an offer and to be paid for that. Many of the matchmakers out there, and believe it or not, there aren't that many that are professional matchmakers in the US, which is part of why I built the school to really proliferate this industry a little bit more. But many of them are just very heart-centered and not, you know, don't always think about the business acumen that's needed to go into the industry. So that's, you know, part of what we try to get them to sort of shift their story that, yes, you can help people and you should. And I think it's really needed now more than ever with this loneliness epidemic that the Surgeon General put out a report on. So that was part of the impetus for me to do this. And then I felt that, you know, rather than being a matchmaker myself, I felt that I can live out my mission of helping this issue through creating more matchmakers because we need them. And the online space is not cutting it. Right now, that's actually more of a hindrance in many ways, even though I met my husband that way, but that was many, many years ago. Nowadays, it's really, really hard to have success with online dating. So I think matchmakers are really poised to make a huge difference in this loneliness epidemic.
I think so too. I think that matchmakers in our American society get a bad rap. Because the idea is like, oh, well, I want it to be serendipity. I want it to be love at first sight. I have a 17-year-old daughter, and the prospect of her meeting her Prince Charming at some point here, I've been advising her. I'm like, look, you really need to see how this person behaves in these various different scenarios, right? Like, sure, they're great at dating or maybe whatever, but you know, how do they treat their mom? How do they treat their sister? How do they treat their other friends that are girls? How do they act under stress? How do they act when they are tired? I think that I'm excited about the idea of matchmaking becoming a bigger part of the American culture, because I think it would solve a lot of heartache.
Yeah, I think a lot of people talk about, oh, I just want to meet someone organically. Well, today, everything is digital. It's not as organic as people would like it to be. It's not like the old days where people would walk around somewhere and, you know, meet somewhere, either, I don't know, a church or a synagogue or somewhere. Like, we're just all in our homes, especially after COVID, and we're on our computers. And so the most organic way, quite frankly, is to have a matchmaker say, hey, I have someone, and, you know, and introduce you almost like friends are introducing you, versus going online, working off of filters that are meaningless for long-term meaningful relationships, like a person's height, their weight, their, you know, all the superficial filters that are on the online space, which now is training younger people to think that those are the things that are valuable. They're not. None of that is connected to your core values, your lifestyle goals, and the things that really matter in a relationship. And so matchmakers will counteract that, because at least the ones that I'm training they know what matters in terms of longevity and long-term relationships. It's not going to be those filters that are being used on these online platforms. And basically they're databases. So you're not dating online, you're on a catalog of singles, and then you have to market yourself. And that's a whole different process versus what you're doing when you're on your own, meeting people in public or being introduced by somebody,
Yeah.
One last thing I want to say about that. It's really funny. Like, let's just say you don't want to work with a matchmaker. People would rather go online to an online dating app and meet someone that way than to allow their friends to introduce them. And I don't get that. I'm all about like, turn everybody into your matchmaker. When you are ready for love, you tell everybody this is the year I want to meet my person, and here's what I'm looking for. In the same way you do in business, like this is my target market, etc. You give them a clear understanding and idea of what it is that you want in a partner, so that people can say, "Oh, I know somebody like that." And you reel it in and you turn everybody into a matchmaker. But most people are like, no, I don't want my friends to introduce me, or I don't want my family, or I don't want my mom. That was like how it happened back in the day. Your mom was out there promoting you to other singles to get you married.
No, I think that we see ourselves as individuals, but really we're part of a family. And that's one of the things I love that Juli's been doing, right? Is you're I call it outsourcing heritage, or you're helping folks create environments to connect with their kids and to create shared experience. I think that's cool. So Juli, you're in the authoring space, but yet you also run a business. What was what was the most surprising part of running a business that you weren't expecting?
Even if you're an expert in the industry and you understand your product and you understand what you're doing, it's getting yourself out there and getting the product out there, getting your service out there, finding the market. I found, that's one of the most challenging. Like Arlene touched on, we're in the digital world, so having social media and everything like that definitely helps. But I've also noticed in business, it is relationships. So really having like the face-to-face, one-on-one, that's really where you're going to grow your book of business, where you're going to generate business. So there is a personal connection, and relationships are important in business as well.
Yeah, I agree. So in my coaching business, I come from a manufacturing background and engineering background. And the old joke about engineers is the extroverted engineers looks at other people's shoes instead of just their own. Like that's kind of, and I work in a basement, and I've worked in a basement for 5 years. But I feel that loneliness that you're talking about, Arlene, and getting out there and getting involved in networking circles, which is what I've been doing over the last 2 months, very hard, has been really great. And Dr. Andrea introduced me to a group of folks that ultimately included Sifu. And that's why I'm here. And it's those, what I tell my younger friends is this: building relationships is like putting bricks down in a castle. For a long time, it doesn't seem like it's making a big difference, but eventually you start to have a wall, and eventually you start to have a house, and eventually you start to have something really beautiful. But just dedicating to putting a couple of bricks down every year, or every month, every week, and then eventually it builds over time. Andrea, what are your thoughts on some great ways to build not just relationships, but business relationships? Oh, she doesn't have a great internet. All right. Sorry about that. Well, Arlene, so you're, again, and you answered my question about matchmaking, and I feel like I kind of derailed you. You're in business coaching now, though, right? What's your favorite part about business coaching?
I love helping people succeed. I've always been a person that if I taste something delicious, I want everybody else to taste it. Like I can't just have it for myself. It's like if I have any kind of success, I feel like everyone should have the same success. That's why I call myself a mentor, because I'm not just, I feel like someone can just teach something and not having had the experience, but I teach something that I've already achieved myself. And I feel really authentic, because authenticity is one of my core values. So I don't get that, what is the saying that they say about coaches? Like I can't think of it right now. But anyway, my point is that it's stuff that I've done before, and then I'm constantly learning new things. And so I want to help other people know these things, like to remove all the trials and tribulations that I went through myself as a matchmaker when I was trying to build my business, that I wish I could have gone somewhere and said, hey, what do I need to know? I don't know what I don't know. And so that's what I'm doing with the matchmakers. And I've had people go through my programs that have been in the business for 30 years, 25 years, 15 years. And they've been like, oh my gosh, I'm a big technology person. I don't usually share this, but I have a degree in technology that's from way back when. And so I love technology. So I'm always looking for ways to help people streamline, because matchmaking businesses usually start out with a very core group, maybe even just one person. And so you have to cover a lot of ground, to be able to succeed. And if you're doing everything manually and you're doing things the hard way, it's just going to be difficult. And the business itself of finding a good partner for someone is already difficult. So you don't need to add to that. So my goal is always to help people, be in the right mindset, have some strategies, and also to make sure that they have the right technology and knowledge that they need to really be successful. And that fulfills me. It's just a wonderful feeling when I see people who have gone from like barely having a business to out there. Like I see them on social media doing 1 million events and having success and getting clients and helping people. That thrills me. That feels good for me. So
No, I love it. I love it. Okay, so we're gonna go Juli, and then
Drew, I'm gonna try to jump in.
Oh,
I don't know
dude,
if you can
please.
hear me or not.
you're back. Oh no, we lost you again.
Oh, I think we lost you. I lost you.
Please check out Sifu's communication courses and so forth. I'll put a little banner up so you guys can check that out, because he's all about having people have their ability to really be able to communicate better. So please love on Sifu.
I think teaching to communicate better is huge too. I mean, even having, 2 young kids, their brains aren't developed. We all know that. Your frontal lobe doesn't develop till you're 25. So they get very frustrated very easily. And, as adults, I try not to say use your words, because that's not really helpful. Just get some more angry. But I try to say like, look, I know you're mad, but I cannot read your mind. Can you please just tell me what's going on? Because I need to know what's going on so I can help you. So just like really communicating like clear to get them to talk. And, sometimes when children especially are tired, they're hungry, they're moody, you kind of have to guess. I notice my kids will get really ornery if they're overly tired, and I'll look at the clock and I'm like, oh, we're 20 minutes past bedtime, and you're not going to rationalize with them then. So just being able to get them to sleep and talk about it in the morning, or just talk about what they need to talk about in that moment to calm themselves to sleep. So like, dealing with adult relationships and kid relationships, absolutely you need communication, but there's different types of communication depending on the age as well that need to occur. And when you're an adult communicating with a kid, you really need to understand like that kid isn't capable of communicating like an adult. So you need to, for me, I don't sugarcoat things. I'm very like clear in my communication, not like, just go to sleep. You'll be better in the morning. Like, is there something you need to talk about right now? Like, why are you so upset? What happened? Like asking the open-ended questions. I try to go at it in that regard to get them talking. And that does seem to work, but also not trying to tell them how they feel. Like, if my youngest son is having a meltdown, my oldest son will be like, you're fine. And I'll kind of point out, you don't know how he's feeling. Don't tell him he's fine. He's obviously having feelings that aren't fine, or he wouldn't be acting this way. So I'm trying to, talk about what's going on while it's happening. It can also be stressful and frustrating at sometimes, but just letting the kids know like, hey, look how open I am with my communication and talking about my feelings, and then they can come out and be open with their communication. I might say something kid appropriate, like, I'm really tired, and when I'm tired, I'm frustrated. So if I sound crabby, you guys didn't do anything wrong. I just need to get some sleep. Like, I'll talk about what's going on with me so they can see it and hear it and process it and hopefully apply it to themselves one day as well.
No, I love that. And I'll tell you, we all need that sort of self-awareness and communication tools. I mean, I had, it seems folks above a certain age seem to have a little more difficulty with that, like in the business world is what I'm talking about. The younger generation seem to be a little bit better at that from the folks that I had on my teams. But creating that that space where they can talk about those things. And then as you as a leader looking at them and saying, is my team worn out right now? Have I pushed them too hard? Do I need to pull it back? Because you might feel like you have the answer in that situation. And maybe sometimes you're right. But if the team isn't at a spot where they can engage that, I think it really damages the relationship. Yeah, I love communication there. That's awesome. Well, let me change the show a little bit here. What are you all looking forward to for the rest of 2024 and 2025? Juli, we'll let you go first, and then we'll swing around to Arlene. Like, what are your goals, or what are you super excited about? What gets you up in the morning here for 2024 and then 2025?
Well, I guess I'm just excited that I have many more manuscripts ready to go, and I feel like I'm not done. So I feel like my stories are evolving as the age of my children evolve. And now I'm learning more about the industry, maybe looking at, literary agents, different publishing companies, styles of publishing, and seeing where else I can go with it. And also, I really try to keep in mind that I'm writing for the kids. I'm not writing for me all the time. So just asking the kids, well, what do you guys like? And like right now at their ages, they're really into the graphic novels. So I'm embracing that. It's a new style for me. I don't know if it'll go anywhere, but I'm excited to try it out and just expand on my own creativity.
And how old are they?
8 and 9.5.
And they're into graphic novels now. Cool.
Yeah, like the Dog Man, the Bad Guys, seems to be pretty popular amongst the 2nd and 4th graders, at least little boys in that age group.
That's fun. My kids are not in that age group, so I'm out of sync.
I read a graphic novel for the first time when I was substituting for an English class about 15 years ago in college. And I was surprised I enjoy it because I didn't think it would be my thing. But what I really like most is that you're trying something new. And so whether it's in business or in your personal relationship or an intimate relationship, that you're being creative and testing the waters to see what else is out there and what's available to you, so that people can have a new experience. And it doesn't have to be anything odd or weird or kinky that, like some people are like, wait, what are you talking about? And I'm not saying, jump off a cliff, in business or, do something extreme, but just something that you've never done before, or a new way of showing your love or affection for someone, or a new way of holding and conducting a business meeting. Just little subtle things can really make a big difference in just helping people think differently and react differently and to show up differently.
I love that. Innovation.
Yes, Arlene, what are you excited about here for the next year?
The one question that I get often from people who go through my courses is, what should I be doing every day, every week, every month? What are the tasks that I should have on my calendar, and how do I, move my business forward? And so I got that question like 3 times in one day, and I decided I'm writing a book about this. And so I wrote a book for matchmakers on what they should be doing daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly. And it's really, honestly, this book would be ideal for any small business owner, but my market is in the matchmaking industry, just so people feel like when you're an entrepreneur and, you go from corporate America into entrepreneurship, you have to be self-propelled. You need to be disciplined. You need to be focused in order to move your business forward, or it's just going to be stagnant, or you're not going to have the amount of leads or the amount of clients that you want to have, and you can't keep your head above water, and it's a struggle. And so I'm hoping that this book will be something that will provide a framework for people to really get up every day and know exactly what they need to be doing, instead of there's like these dumb to-do lists that are complete waste of time and energy. And most of the stuff on there really doesn't even need to be done. And quite frankly, when you don't do it, you realize, oh, it didn't matter, So that's what I'm really excited about. So the book is supposed to launch in December. I'm, still tweaking and adding, and I keep thinking of things, which that's the hard part, Juli. I don't know how you get to finish a book, because I feel like every time I think I'm done, something else pops into my head, and it's like a constant thing. So, but yeah, our target is December, and I'm really hoping that I put it out there, which is psychologically one of the things that women can do when they have a goal or a New Year's resolution or something like that, is to talk about it. Once you talk about it and you put it out there, you're more likely to reach that goal. This is specific to women. With men, it's a little different. In order for you to stick with your goal, you have to break it up into smaller goals. That's how men operate. But women operate by like, just because I said it and I put it out there, now everybody knows I got to live up to this. So that's what I did. I'm like, December is the month. So fingers crossed.
Awesome. Juli, I want to give you a chance to give some advice here. I think I'm excited about this. How do you know when the book is done, and how do you resist all the other fun stuff you can pack in there?
Well, first you have to remember I'm writing children's books, so they're probably much shorter than the type of book Arlene is writing. So my books just come naturally. The words do. Like I said, they all start out impromptu as bedtime stories. And now my youngest will say, you should turn that one into a book, Mom. Like, he just tells me. So I'm like, okay. And then I go to sleep. And in the morning, I'm half asleep, I feel like, when I'm telling these stories. So in the morning, I'm like, what was that story about again last night? How did it go? And then I listen to my 7-year-old tell it back to me. And then if I have, an extra 30 minutes before work, I'll just type it up real quick. And then I at least get the words. And then while they're watching their bedtime show, they like to watch Bluey. So, I don't care to watch Bluey, but I'll sit next to them and they're watching their show. And then I'll work on my manuscript while they're doing their thing, and I'll do my thing. And it's just kind of a natural process. I don't force it. I do have a full-time career as well. So this is my hobby. It's not my, money-making business that pays all my bills. So there isn't as much pressure to be successful either. So I don't have as many deadlines with this. So there isn't as much pressure to get it done or, get it done perfectly. It's just a little bit here and there. And, the words, like I said, come pretty quick. I type it up pretty quick. And then if I'm doing my own illustrations, I use clip art because I don't feel like I'm a very good artist. So then I'll ask my kids for advice and they'll tell me how to change it. And then once my kids approve it, then I'll format it. So it's all kind of based on, what the kids say. Yep, the story's done. Yep, the pictures look good. Okay, we're done. So
That's fun. That's very cool.
I have some advice for Arlene. I own a publishing company as well. And so I've consulted multiple people through their years with books and so forth, and consulted with people who've published with other publishers. And one of the things is when you're writing, as soon as you have a new idea or a new expansion, that's really another book. So really save it and write it and put it in for something, because you're not giving your people something to get next. So just like we talked about creating that creativity or that excitement, or, it's almost like the next date, the next 7 years, save it back and let them have it. Because your first book is really the tease and the information. You don't want to fire hose them. It's too much. You'll come across as too much. They'll be overwhelmed. So it's okay to say, this is what I have. This is your gift. And then hold back the rest that will develop into a new story that follows up, so that they can continue to follow their journey with your journey, because you're growing and expanding with all the wisdom and knowledge that you have. And they will be ready. They may not be ready for it now, so hold it back and give it to them later. And even if they are ready for it, let's say they're already advanced, then they'll be salivating, waiting for your next book.
That is such gold. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
It's funny because I had thought about doing, I guess, what do they call that? Like an anthology, or, like just multiple books. But you totally just nailed it. Thank you for that. That's a great, great reminder. I think I'm going to go that route, because you're right. Otherwise I will overwhelm people, and not everybody's ready for it.
Well, and I'll also challenge you. This is what I used to used to keep this in my desk at work when I was a chief engineer. And literally every one of these is like 4 or 5 note cards. And these are common talks that I would give all of my employees. Like, some of them were like, you're brand new. Let's talk about how to be positive and not negative. I called it the vampires suck talk. But then as they grew and they matured, we started talking about how do you do strategic planning and how do you plan out and that those talks were called the leadership development paradox. But they were all like, they're not a book. Like each one of these is more like a chapter. And so I would just keep those little notes. And then I started giving them to so many people that I would pull these out. And so these have become some of my catchphrases, some of the things that I just tell people in life, because I've told each one of these stories probably 50 or 60 times. And it allows me to be a better leader. So that's not the book level, but like those things that are coming to you, jot them down and keep them, because I guarantee you they're going to become part of your brand, a big part of your brand.
Yeah, that's good.
Cool.
Thank you.
And we are at the end of our time together. However, Drew, I do want to challenge you because I just adore you, not only as a business co-host guesting today, but as a long-term friend. And I've got to see you as a dad and, hear of your beautiful relationship with your wife and being a business partner with you. I would like to say, when did you decide that those were not a book?
Well,
and that's a rhetorical
and we're out of
question.
time.
And we're out of time.
No, I appreciate that nudge. I thought about putting together in a book for a long time. And for a long time, there was something missing in my soul. I was too negative. I was in corporate America and I was in it. I was a doer. I got things done. And really this year has been a journey for me to discover that I'm not actually an action first person, which is what you have to be when you're a chief engineer. I'm actually a nurture person. And as I've developed and I've rolled into that, like, let me help you succeed and let me lift you up, nurture side of myself. I think in a spiritual sense, I think I'm ready to write a book on that order. The book that would have come out 2 years ago would not have been the right book. And I knew that, but I think, I'll take the challenge. Well, cool. Well, we are out of time. Listen, if you are watching, and you say, hey, look, I've been in the business for a while, maybe the matchmaking space, but maybe just business in general. And you're like, I need a coach. I tell people all the time, I was watching the Olympics this year and I noticed that all the gold medalists had a coach. In fact, they had a bench full of coaches. I have a bench full of coaches. Dr. Andrea has a bench full of coaches.
Me too.
So anybody that wants to succeed at that pro level, they get a coach. There's folks that you get a coach like my daughter, who you just saw on the show. She was a soccer player, or she's just starting soccer. So she has a coach because she's just starting. Mm-hmm. And then the pros have a coach. And then there's a big gap in the middle of folks that are semi-pro and not getting paid very well for it. So if you are looking for a coach to help you know what you should do every day so that we can, like, practical advice, go seek out Arlene. Or if you're looking for deeper connection, maybe connect with her on a matchmaking level. If you are seeking deeper connection with your kids and you want just a whimsical, innocent story that you can read and enjoy those sweet times with your younger kids, reach out to Juli. And you can find her on julibohmerbooks.com. And you can find Arlene on lovepromastermind.com. So I think that we're ready for the show. Do we click the Business Prowess outro?
Yes, that is it. And thank you guys for watching Sifu Raphael. We always appreciate him and love him. He's at the He-Man event down in, I believe he got down to Florida. I thought it was in Florida. Maybe it's not in Florida. I don't know where it is, but I'm sure he's having a wonderful
Facebook
time.
says it's in Florida.
And so thank you guys so much. And if you want to hit the outro, there we are.
Well, thanks, ladies. Such a pleasure to have you.
Cheers.